mission is to advance business opportunities, right? And we certify MBEs to make sure that they are authentically being owned, operated, and controlled by the designated historically underutilized population groups here in the United States, right? And then we our goal is to help you connect them to corporate members, and those corporate members then take them and tie them into their strategy. So the MMSDC metrics, in our opinion, must be met. They're representative of the mission and executed in the most effective and efficient manner. And along with the MMSDC, there's the MBDA, right? The Minority Business Development Agency. And we're part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, right? And our mission is to foster the growth and global competitiveness of U.S. businesses that are minority owned, right? And so we do this by, facilitating transactions and helping folks get connected to contracts, and we do consulting, business consulting, and we help folks get access to capital, and then try and also create, help folks with their growth initiatives. Are they going to grow organically, or are they going to grow using mergers and acquisitions, JVs, all that other kind of stuff, teaming arrangements. So we work together in this area to help folks like you get connected to minority businesses, as well as help corporations really construct strategies that tie into what the organization's goals are, what their growth opportunities are. So we're the tools in the marketplace that help you, kind of get there as it relates to supplier diversity within your organizations. And always keep connected to the thought what supplier diversity is within your organization as we go through this presentation. Any questions?
I think all set.
Okay, I think I'm gonna like this group. So what's the fundamental difference between DNI and supplier diversity? And I kind of put it there in the top. So DNI is usually focused on workforce, and so and there are some organizations that have chief diversity officers that have a dual role, looking at workforce, supply chain, and value chain. So they have supplier diversity that rolls up into diversity, equity, and inclusion. But from a very definition, DNI is really looking at making sure that the organization itself creates a welcoming environment for people of less privileged identities. And then we already talked about what supplier diversity does, and there's the definition again. So we're looking at MBEs, supply chains, value chains, and trying to make sure that we get as much competition in there as possible, in being inclusive of the historically underutilized population groups that are identified here in the US. And there are other countries that have done so, right? So best practices. Just by a show of hands, how many are familiar with the best practices? Okay. Show of hands, thumbs up. Okay, all that good stuff. So I see the thumbs up and the hands going up. So I'll just quickly run through this because some of this is very fundamental. Some of you guys are very familiar with this. So, and then those of you who are not, just connect with me afterwards, and then I can share information with you. Because this presentation in its entirety is not something that's sent out, but certainly we can provide you with information, and we'll keep connected with you so we can feed you the information that you need in order to kind of continue to grow your supplier diversity programs and strategies, or get them started. So of course, number one is establish a policy, and the reason why the policy is established and where it's established at the top of the corporation is to understand, helps the organization understand the mission as it relates, but also helps the organization understand the trade-offs as it relates to what you want to do with your supplier diversity strategy, or your intentions, right? Trade-offs meaning, who do you recognize as a diverse supplier? And certainly there are different variations of that in different corporations. And then you want to develop a corporate diverse supplier development plan. And we're kind of talking about that today. And then make sure your communications internally and externally are in place. And then work with all of your organizations across all of your functional groups across the organization to establish where the needs are and where the pains are in the organization, so you can create and make sure that you have your minority businesses integrated into those functional groups, so you can provide needs and provide sources for those needs. And then establish a comprehensive diverse supplier development program, just as you work with non-MBEs in your procurement strategies, part of supplier development management, SDMs within the organizations. Just make sure that you get the diverse suppliers engaged in that as well. And then as you build your program, as your program gets bigger, you have to make sure that you have the right tools in place so that you can track and report and set goals for the organization and the different functional groups that you work with. And then, just like any other group, if a quality group or an operations group, what is the continuous improvement plan that you have in place to make sure that your supplier diversity strategy is thriving, right? Not just internally, but externally as well. And then once you get all that pulled together, then you establish a second tier program and begin to pass down these best practices and strategies into your supply chain, so you can get the multiplier effect that's needed, because we'll talk about that a little later. So there are 8 best practices. There are 4 emerging best practices that are being developed or have been developed by the $1 billion roundtable. So, but we're going to stick with the 8 right now. And then as we continue to stay connected after today, we can talk about what those 4 are and how they would integrate into your organization. Any questions? So supply diversity as a solution. So let's talk about that for a minute. We have to kind of set the standard for the organization, right? And you want to be seen as a solution within within your organization, and not an island that's out doing something different or a nice to have, kind of thing. Like, you want to be viewed as a solution to the organization, and you control that, right? As a professional, as a subject matter expert, you set the pace, you establish the perspective and how you're perceived in the organization on as to what you bring to the table, right? So we want to go from a very fundamental perspective of supplier diversity to saying, okay, I get that out, that makes sense, I'm not struggling with that, I get it, there's 8 best practices, and I kind of get the tools and folks, I get the definition, but then I have to understand how that all comes together and I become the solution, right? You, meaning that department, the one that you build, the folks that you network with and create relationships within the organization, right? And then how these solutions, I'm going to show you just briefly how the solutions tie to the MMSDC best practices. So supply diversity is about presenting solutions. And we have to dispel rumors and things like that. It's kind of like when, when purchasing first started, right? Purchasing started, I'm giving away my age here. Purchasing was someone sitting at a typewriter typing up purchase orders on a piece of paper, right? I need 10 pencils. Okay, give me about 5 minutes. I'll have that purchase order typed up. Go to wherever we have our contracts and get the pencils. Supply diversity is not only about a spend goal. The real purpose is to innovate by bringing diversity into the value and supply chain. And this is a real question. I'd like someone to answer it. When I say that you innovate by creating diversity, what do I mean by that? Anybody? Remember, don't worry about wrong answers. I just want to see how you're thinking about this and how you think about your jobs and what as it relates to supply diversity.
This is Michelle. Hopefully I can answer that. To me, it's as you bring in a more diverse pool of suppliers, then you're also bringing in more solutions to be able to help innovate with what you have to offer and what is being offered to you.
That's good. So let's pull on that string more, Michelle. I like your answer. So when you bring in this diversity, what are you really doing with your supply chain, and how does that become opportunistic for the buyer, right? No matter what functional group it's in, what is it? How is it opportunistic for the buyer?
More choices.
Say it.
Sorry.
Who said that? There you go. I say you.
Just more choice, more options, more possibilities.
I like that. What else? There's a word I'm looking for, and somebody's going to say it. Think about Porter's 5 forces in the industry, right? What is it? What does that do, right? You have buyers and sellers, substitutions, you have barriers to entry. And with these buyers and sellers, what happens in the middle of that industry? Rivalry, competition, right? So you have your own little ecosystem that you're creating by bringing in a more inclusive pool of suppliers. It's not the same old boys and suppliers that have been there for 20 years at price creep. So I'm just throwing large lobbing softballs out there, but the reality is when you begin to diversify your supply chain, right, you're creating this ecosystem for your procurement group where they can be selective about who they move forward in the sourcing event, right? So now you're bringing in folks you haven't talked to before, right? Didn't think there were solutions out there as it relates to the, to minority business, and all of a sudden they show up, as a rock star, right? Or not. Everybody's not a rock star, but at the end of the day, you are creating something in the supply chain, right? Through the result of this is thought divergence, right? Now watch this. And I gave you the answer on the screen. This competition converts to what? Value, right? It's value for the organization. And value means more than just, a shiny penny, right? Sometimes it's process related, sometimes it's, it's just all kind of things. Even relationships become value. So number one, it's not just about spend. Supply diversity professionals are seeking out needs, right? And matching them to solutions. So you can't go to market first without going to visit all the folks within the organization that have the needs. And seriously, you got really 3 questions. What's your need? Where's your pain? And where are you trying to achieve a gain, right? As a professional, you're going into the office, you're going into the department, you're going to your vice president, you're going to the C-suite, and you're saying, I got 3 questions. Today's your day. It's Christmas in July. Needs, pains, gains, tell them to me. Let me go out in the market and try and match a solution to that, and then bring it back in the form of a value proposition, right? That's going to usher in this innovation that we're all talking about right now. So staying in the supply diversity conversation, right? Don't get one win and quit, right? Or don't get a loss and quit. This is too hard, can't do it. Oh my God, nobody agrees with me. It's about perseverance and driving and making sure that you're communicating the value add. That's up to you. You have to go and present it to the organization, right? You're the person that's going to go out there and do this and make sure that all the folks that you're talking to understand the true value add that supply diversity brings to the organization, and minority businesses can add to the organizational growth and goals and the things that they are trying to attain to within the year, the next year, the next 5 years, right? And so filter out the needs, pains, and gains, and then have the discussion, stay in the conversation, and make sure that you are bringing solutions, just don't bring anybody. Don't bring the first person or organization or something short of. Let me tell you something, and this is reality. Equal doesn't get it. And as supplier diversity professionals, we have to understand what they're equal to, and then you know, the buyer or the person who's looking for it, why would I want equal? I'm trying to win. We don't bring equal. If we can't find something, you have tools in the marketplace to help you. You got me, you got the MBDA, you got the MMSDC. Tell us what it is, and we can say, okay, if it's not there, we'll create it. We will, that's our jobs in the marketplace, to create solutions that meet the needs of the organizations, right? And so, again, this cannot be done or accomplished without communication, right? And integration within the organization and across functional groups. What am I really saying to you, right? Let me be clear. You can't do it sitting in a cubicle. You can't do it sitting in your office. You can't do it looking at your laptops. You got to go communicate. So best practice number 4 is what you're connected to here. The internal and external communication, telling your successes, meeting the folks in the organization, understanding the needs, external communication, right? Going out into the marketplace, talking with your peers, talking with minority businesses, talking with the MMSDC, the MBDA. Hey, I need help. This is accomplished by networking and communicating with folks that can help you externally, and then getting the real information and then telling your successes within the organization. Any questions, comments, please? If you have comments, you can bring them. If you're on mute, check. Anything popping up in the?
Hi, this is Rayanne. And I certainly hear what you're saying. And as you're presenting it, I'm thinking about my context within working within a healthcare organization. And as I'm listening to you and the best practice and all of that, it sounds like you're suggesting that this requires at least one dedicated person, someone for whom this is part or of their responsibility or their sole responsibility. And for many, I know in my organization, we don't have anyone necessarily that's primarily dedicated to this. So is that part of your messaging too, related to when you talk about these relationships and making these connections and all of that?
Yeah, I would say to you that was the old conventional way of thinking about it. And certainly, let me say this. It is good to have a dedicated person, right, in the organization that's driving supplier diversity. But that's not, you know, as my grandmother used to say, again, I keep giving away my age, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? And every time she said, I had this weird image, she popped up in my head, why am I skinning a cat? But that's just me, it's a detail. You can also set up your organization, and we can get together afterwards, right? Think about it like this. I use the word network, right? So you're creating networks internally and externally, right? When I was the Supplier Diversity, Global Director for Supplier Diversity and Business Development for Johnson Controls, global, right? I couldn't be around the world everywhere at the same time, right? Because I'm not, you know, omnipresent, right? It's not something that I can do. So what I did was I said, you know, part of my strategy, this is why I said in the beginning, creating strategy is important. Part of my strategy was I will create some local area process owners who own this, right, around the country. And I met with that team around the country and in the country, right? Because I was the only global director, so I understand your pain. I was the sole person in that role. And when I negotiated the contract, because you do negotiate the contract, I negotiated, hey, I need your commitment that somebody in each one of your organizations is going to be a local area process owner who owns supplier diversity in that part of the world. Done, Al. Okay, now what's next? So your point's well taken. You have to have somebody who owns it, or a group of people that owns it. Make sense?
Yes.
Any more questions?
There's nothing in the chat. Just wanted to let you know I am monitoring the chat and there's nothing there at the moment.
Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about another area. Supplier diversity must uncover needs to bring solutions. I kind of knocked that home, but I want to drive a little deeper in that, get a little granular. Supplier diversity, look how I'm changing this just slightly. The supplier diversity subject matter expert, which means you have to have knowledge, you have to study. The folks that are on the team have to understand supplier diversity. And that doesn't exclude you from understanding other disciplines within any business to make sure that you're connected to the business. You have to have tools and techniques to gather data and the skill set to uncover needs of the organization through Lean, Six Sigma, problem solving, right? Plan, do, check, act, right? The PDCA, understand different forms of, problem solving. I happen to like Kepner-Tragle. There are other things that you can use, define, measure, analyze, improve, control, right? Six Sigma kind of stuff, DMAC. You have to understand how to dig into the process, get with each one of the process owners within the organization and say, well, I see you having a problem here, right? That seat doesn't quite, get to the right H position or whatever. We have folks that can come in, help you with design that are MBEs, very talented. They do business with Chrysler, Ford, GM. That's a real supplier that I know. So you have to kind of get in there and understand how to help them solve problems, right? And speak their language and not, go in and say, hey, just give me what you got, right? No, that's not going to work because then that's what you get, right? It's just kind of like, well, you didn't take it serious. I didn't take it serious. We have to be serious about what we're doing. Go in, sit down, problem solve with these folks, make sure we're walking out with real needs and not just nice to haves, right? A nice to have is not something that you go to market with, right? It's kind of like, it's not difficult to sell water, right? Even when water's free, think about how much utility water has in the market when you can go home, get tap water, drink it out of a cup, but yet you go to the store and buy it. That's the kind of utility that you're looking for when you have discussions with these folks in the organization. You got to dig down, get in there, do the work, meet the teams, get to know the people, right? So we're talking about how this ties to best practices. This is developing a plan, creating a strategy, continuous improvement, best practice 2, 3, and 7. We're really digging in now. We're using the best practices. We're establishing a strategy. We're taking that policy that your CEO or COO crafted and said, I understand my trade-offs. We're only dealing with these guys and this is what we're going to do. And you're marching through the organization because you have a policy that has the CEO's signature on it or the CPO's signature says, guys, we're committed to this. And then you think about solutions as a derivative from uncovering and understanding business needs. That's where the only way you can get solutions is you got to understand that there's a problem you're solving. And that's just life. It doesn't matter where you are, what business you're in. You have a job because you're solving a problem. A business exists because there's a problem in the marketplace that needs to be solved. An industry exists because there are problems in the world where that industry has value and has utility. And that's the same thing same way we have to look at supplier diversity. This subject matter expert, you have to have access to the business needs in order to bring results to the organization, right? And understand that our mission is to meet the needs, alleviate the pains, and usher in the gains. And that's just not mantra. That's a real thing, right? Buyers keep jobs because they help manage the material percentage costs of goods sold. They drive it down. Consequently, the value add of the business grows when you look at the gross profit margin. You are a person that's responsible for helping to achieve that goal as well as others. Wow. Does anybody else hear that noise? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's someone who just joined the meeting. I just muted the microphone, so sorry about that.
Okay. So when you think in terms of this disposition of a problem, you see, it's not something that is isolated to you because you're a supplier diversity person. It mushrooms up to the top of the chain. An industry can't exist unless there's utility in the marketplace. So you're a part of that chain, right? And you're out and you're solving problems internally, bringing in extended enterprises that solve problems. So when you think in terms of diversifying the supply chain, you know, that it definitely has the potential to achieve, you know, the opportunity that we're talking about. You're creating competition, and businesses get better because of competition. Either they get better because of competition, the person that they're trying to get advantage to, or they're comparatively advantaged because of how they make the sausage. So you're trying to solve both problems. You want to find somebody who's comparatively advantaged, that can bring a solution, help the organization reduce the cost, and then they become competitively advantaged. You see how that works? You're a very valuable part of the organization. So let me stop. Any questions?
No, it all makes sense.
Okay. So think about value add. What constitutes a solution, right? So we're drilling down, so we kind of find this idea of value add. As a supplier diversity subject matter expert, value add is key to creating leverage for your supplier diversity process. Think in terms of what does the value proposition improve or transform, right? Is this perceived value that you're bringing to the organization as a role in the organization, and then who you're bringing to the organization. So we're looking at this. Another lens that you have to look at, practice from, and create discipline around is every step that you take, every connection that you make, every conversation that you have. Are you the value add in the discussion? That's a real question. You got to ask yourself that question. I'm not asking you to answer it today, but as a supplier diversity subject matter expert, that's what you think. Those folks that are really doing real well, those organizations that are being leveraged in the marketplace and taking advantage of the industry that they're in, are those folks who really understand how to innovate and bring ingenuity to market. And a lot of that, a good percentage of it is how well they're diversifying their solution in the marketplace, right? Think about, you know, how you create a blue ocean. You've gone out, you've studied, and now you've created something that expands an industry. You're doing the same thing within your organization. You're going out, you're finding extended enterprises, and you're extending value because you're actually creating competition and causing your engineers and designers and everybody that you talk with in the hospital arenas and hospitality. It's the same thing, right? There's solutions out there that can begin to differentiate you in the marketplace, utilizing this diversification that we're talking about of the value chain and supply chain and suppliers within your ecosystem. So we must constantly ask ourselves, what is the value proposition we bring to the organization? And again, we're dealing with best practice 2, 3, and 4, right? We're talking about communication, and look where strategy is. Strategy is in everything that we do. If we don't create the strategy, we don't have any action plans that we're working with to help bring a difference and differentiate your organization and create the competitive advantage that they're looking for you to do as a subject matter expert. Any questions, comments? So let's look at what we just talked about. So think about it this way: needs convert to projects, projects convert to solutions, and solutions create corporate buy-in because you're adding value, right? Your value add. You're just not bringing in folks to have discussions. You're bringing in folks because you want to make a difference for the organization and help achieve the organizational growth, the goals, whatever those 1 year, 2 year, 3 year goals are. So if you think about it as far as a process is concerned, it's something that you're continuing to do over and over and over again. And the more you do it, the more connectivity you get to the organization, the more value add they see you contributing to the organization. Consequently, the more value you have, right? And in the marketplace, think about the marketplace. You're out, you're meeting different people, you're getting different ideas. And so your ideology box continues to grow because now you're talking to everybody. You're not just talking to MBEs, but you're talking to non-MBEs, and you're kind of seeing where the differences are, and you're helping to accentuate this plan and the organizations that you're talking to. Comments? Is it making sense?
That makes perfect sense.
Okay. So you see how this cycle, this ecosystem is, if you drilled all the way down to the bottom, you've got some best practices that's helping you to drive this, right? It's just like quality and ISO and, you know, all the different tools that they have as best practices that helps you create poka-yolks that allows you not to allow errors to escape into the marketplace, the hospital systems, the hospitalities groups, the colleges and universities that are on the line. You think in terms of all the things that you're trying to accomplish, right? Maintaining, you know, even now, right? The new normal. Now we've got something else, a problem to solve, right? How do we create a culture and an environment that's safe for folks to work in? That just opened up demand for folks who not only make the N95 mask, but those folks that can distribute them, those folks that can come in and sanitize, those folks that, you know, I'm speaking of folks that are MBEs right now that you probably don't know about. People who create lighting systems and concepts that now have filtration systems in them that connect to the HVAC systems. You know, lighting is now expanding into how do we connect to the entire organization. There's a company out there right now that can come in and do that kind of conceptual work with you, design a lighting system that you don't have to be there to turn the light. You can actually be at the airport and change your lighting system to convert to whatever you just change your office to look like or your plant floor. It's just this amazing solutions out there that once we get out of the paradigm about MBEs that only make nuts and bolts and put tires on wheels, right? There are folks out there that their value propositions are tied to, when you think about how we do business today, in Industry 4.0 and the Internet of Things, they're connected into this, and now they're bringing technology to the table that allows them to connect with your needs in the organization. Is Andrew on the line? Andrew, are you on the line?
I haven't seen his name yet, unless he called in.
Okay.
I think he is.
So let's move to the next section. So we've talked about I don't know what this means. I'm just pausing for a minute now because I just realized I was getting or there was some comments being made out there. I want to make sure I'm reading through them.
So a majority of comments in the chat box were from earlier, where people were just providing.
Yeah, comments. Yeah, because I didn't see it. Okay. So make sure I didn't leave anybody out. So we've talked about from a very fundamental way of, you know, starting and, you know, understanding best practices and we've talked about, you know, this concept of solutions. And now let's take it to like what I call next level supplier diversity, integrating supplier diversity to the organization strategy, right? And that's an important part. So let me tell you why. I want you to think about this because I do have some questions. I hope you guys are going to be interactive and answer some of these questions. But from a perspective of, you know, working in the 21st century, right? How do you go from being an island to integrated into the process and bring and how do you do that, right? Because it's sort of easy to, you know, talk about and conceptualize, but to actually do it, right? Get it done. And so you're talking to a person who did that, right? I had to find a way to integrate into the organization all the way to the C-suite and get engaged with those folks as they make decisions, you know, early on, right? And getting tied into that strategy. So that's next level supplier diversity. It's getting ingrained into the process. So questions to think about as we evolve to the next level of supplier diversity. through what we measure and how we measure success. So anybody can answer this next question. It's not threatening. You can just kind of tell me a little bit about you. What motivates you to achieve more? Anybody?
Really quick, I want to apologize. I just said that Andrew was not on the line, but Andrew actually called in. So Andrew Sims from the MMSDC is also on the line, but he dialed in. So the 916 number that's on the call is actually Andrew. Sorry.
Hey, Andrew. Hey, Andrew. Can you hear me? Are you on mute?
I can hear you. How are you?
I'm good. Okay, so you got a clapping noise. Thanks for the accolades, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, you probably want to dial back in, or are you driving? Okay, so anybody, what motivates you to achieve more? If you're on the line, you're motivated.
Hi, this is Rayanne, and or I should say Rayanne again. What motivates me to achieve more when it comes to supplier diversity is, in many respects, right now where we're at as an organization, I feel like it starts and stops with me. So I am now in a new role here at our hospital, where I lead our hospital-wide DEI efforts. I have introduced supplier diversity into our considerations. And so for me, I feel, it's almost an obligation that if I don't do it, if I don't ensure this is part of the scope of our work, it probably will not happen. So that very much motivates me. And because I believe in certainly the potential and the need for supplier diversity efforts across all organizations.
Okay. Can we get another view of what motivates you? Anybody?
I can go. Hi, this is Megan from Meyer. For me, it's about making sure that our customers and our team members have the best experience in our locations, and that includes having the products that they need on the shelf and having an environment where they feel welcomed and encouraged to be there. So in order to make sure that customer experience is on point and we can provide everything we need diverse suppliers, and we need to make sure that we're engaging them in all aspects of our business.
That's awesome. Okay, great. Anybody else? Thanks, Megan. My teacher used to do this, and then somebody would just feel obligated. So as you think about this privately and answer the question, these are things that we need to think about, right? As we review this next section that we call the systems of accountability at the MMSDC, right? New metrics and rankings. So as a body of thinkers, as it relates to supplier diversity and the organizations and the corporate members that we serve, we have to step our game up too, right? So the thought here is, how do we get better? So we said to ourselves, we have to measure success differently than we did in the past. Because if we continue down the same path, I'm not going to use that I guess I will. If we do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome, we all know what that means. So we said we have to change the metrics, how we measure success. And so we did, right? We created a different way of, driving to this next level of supplier diversity. And so the systems of accountability is not really measuring where you are, but where you want to be, because it wouldn't be fair if we change the way we measure success and say, oh, you're not doing well, right? So it's about where we want to be as an industry, right? As a solution in the industry. So what we measure, right? So measuring for success using this next level of supplier diversity metrics, what we measure gets done and determines our value and importance within the organization. So metrics also reflect our contribution to the organization, right? So if we're measuring for success and we hit the metric, that means we're bringing success in that area to the organization. So as we develop our programs, we need to identify measures and metrics and rankings for the new millennium MBE sourcing with the intent. Now, if you're underlining stuff or you're taking notes, I want you to write this one down, with the intent to achieve greater concentration of MBEs within procurement strategic plans, ultimately impacting MBE utility in the marketplace, right? And creating connectivity and strategic fit for supply diversity within the overall business strategic plan. That last part of that paragraph or sentence is the aim of this next level of supply diversity. So key words, right? Strategic plans, utility in the marketplace, achieving connectivity and strategic fit in the overall business strategic plan, if you're thinking in terms of where to pick the words out of that sentence. So effective measurements allow for corporations to assess themselves. So we have created a way for you to measure yourself, right? We do the evaluation, we give the evaluation back to you. I'm showing you the utility of being a part and a corporate member of the MMSDC. We provide you the evaluation to check yourself every year to say, am I doing well? And then how you score against that allows your organization to then be branded, because we'll rank you, right? From silver to diamond, and say, these guys are a diamond supply diversity organization, right? And recognize you like that, right? And then you get a chance to bring that evaluation back, do your assessment, understand your gaps, and then create a way for you to close the gaps, ultimately looking at how you achieve or help the organization achieve organizational growth. So again, it's not about me or you, but rather the mission. So what's the mission? The mission is not something that just goes away, right? So as we move forward, just let me make this comment about this whole mission part. It's an infinite game and not a finite game. So the infinite game, right, that we're looking at is how do we, achieve the purpose, right? And the purpose doesn't go away. It's not like a football game, 60 minutes, and you sit on the couch and cry like me because Dallas doesn't know how to win anymore. It's not that kind of game. So let's quickly go over this because I got 5 minutes. There's two things I want you to think about: strategic connectivity and strategic impact. The connectivity is how we design the evaluation, how we're designing measuring success. We understand everybody doesn't come in at the same level, right? And all organizations aren't at the same level. So we have different areas that we're measuring. We're measuring quality, performance, multiplier effect. We're measuring value, right? And the connectivity here is we know you can't perform well if you haven't set up a baseline program that's going to allow you to deliver value, right? And you cannot go to market and do a multiplier effect unless you're performing at a level where you have something to cascade down. And then ultimately the value piece where you connect with the organization strategically. And then the strategic impact, right? Considers how supply diversity connects to and performs against the organization's balanced scorecard or your fiscal plan, whatever you call your planning system every year that you go through as you look at where you want to achieve and get better. Supply diversity is connected to that. And then just some notes about, the supply diversity, the closed system, which we still need. Ralph Moore did a really good job at defining the RGMA 5 levels of supply diversity. And Rayanne, you asked a question that was related to that. You said, so does it mean that we need to have a dedicated person, right? And we need to talk about that, because the beginning program it was just spread everywhere. The basic program had a leader, right? And so that's the difference between 1 and 2. But when you think about the systems of accountability, we talk about this supply diversity strategy from the perspective that is it integrating with the organization? Does it have a quality foundation? Is it able to deliver value? 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this, as we've talked about, this system has 4 different areas of measurement. The quality measure looks at, do you have the best practices the 2 emerging best practices as a foundation in your strategy. The performance section is looking at very specifically, are you doing strategic targeted sourcing, right? And there's a definition, a specific definition for strategic targeted sourcing, right? And we can get together afterwards and talk about that, but it's really looking at, are you looking across the organization, across categories, professional services, and we determine if you have a strategic targeted sourcing strategy by virtue of the fact, do you have MBEs crafted into your strategy as preferred solutions? And are they designed into the end product and the condition? You know, so then the condition of strategic targeted sourcing is satisfying. We're not just looking at direct, we're looking at direct and indirect, because everybody doesn't have direct products, right? And then those companies that have them both, they should be considered in every category. And then the multiplier effect. Are you cascading down your best practices to your supply chain so that we get the multiplier effect in the organization, excuse me, in the community, and in the marketplace, where we can come back and measure it and look at the economic impact of those communities that are considered to be historically underutilized. Like I told you, this is an internal and external value proposition. And we do, the MMSDC, we do care about what's happening internally and externally. But for it to work externally, we have to make sure that the subject matter experts within the organizations are delivering to task. And then the value piece. The value piece here is simply, is there a strategic fit for supplier diversity within the organization? And is it connected to what's most important to the organization, which is driving growth? So, last slide. The ultimate mission is to establish supplier diversity systems of accountability that will infuse value into the organization that gives supplier diversity a strategic fit. Remember, we're evaluating, you're assessing, and you're determining what those gaps are. And then you're saying, I know how to fix the gaps so that supplier diversity results in helping the organization to grow. So here's the what's next question. What's next for your corporate supplier diversity strategy? As you consider evolving, and these are questions you want to ask yourself, I'm not asking you to answer them now. As you consider evolving your strategy, what gaps do you see in your process? And then think in terms of not of where you are, but how impactful you want your strategy to be. Now, here's the thing that we're leaving with you. And Andrew, I hope you are still on the line. We would like to follow up with you, right? We want to think together with you. We want to help you to integrate this process. And we want to help you close the gaps and put countermeasures in place to achieve the growth that we're talking about, not just for supplier diversity, but for your organization, right? So think together, integrate, and then close gaps and help you achieve the growth in the organization and your supplier diversity strategies that you're looking for. Andrew?
I'm here. I think you did a great job, Al.
Did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I put a note in the comment section because what I've encountered in talking to many of the folks who have some level of connectivity to supplier diversity is they have hybrid roles. And I think Rhiannon touched on it. How do we support those, or how do we create an ecosystem or an environment where we can provide support, information, education? Because if I were new and sitting on the other side of what you were describing, I would feel somewhat excited and overwhelmed at the same time. So what can we do, particularly targeting the greater West Michigan area region? How can we connect folks and make sure folks have a network where they can get resources and then, just don't go down this journey alone? And so how do we create a network, an ecosystem where we're supporting folks who have multiple responsibilities within their organization?